What's up? What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Convo Couch. I have a special guest here today while Pasta is in Florida. This is Joseph Zakata. He's part of the Progressive California Uphill Media. He's does a lot of work behind the scenes for us and for other independent media as well. Thanks for coming, Joey. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Not bad. I've had an eventful last few days, and last night I just had a lot of friends over discussing politics because it's nice to be able to discuss that with people because not everyone wants to talk about that, you know?
Yeah, most people tend to try to stay away from the political stuff. I think, and there's very few friends where you can actually talk politics and be honest about it. Is actually a very special thing. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice when you can form connections where you're like, oh yeah, this sucks. Oh yeah, this sucks. And it's like these Democrats, these Republicans, these, you know.
Yeah.
So we went with Joey. We went to the barn burner in Costa Mesa put out by Our Revolution Costa Mesa. And many candidates spoke there. Ruben Major, Maria Estrada, David Hildebrand, Gayle McLaughlin, and other candidates as well, like Miguel Zuniga, who's a Green candidate. It was a great event because there were independents, there were Democrats, there were Greens, and a lot of people showed up. Some of my friends that I talked to, and it was just nice, again, to have that camaraderie there. And what did you most like about that event?
I mean, that was one of the first actual progressive events that I've actually attended. I've attended a few single candidate events, but having that many progressive candidates talking passionately about progressive politics, that was it was freaking awesome. I had a blast with that, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Who was your favorite candidate?
David Hildebrand.
David Hildebrand. So why do you like David Hildebrand?
I mean, David Hildebrand's one of those candidates who I've been following since he started running and since he announced, and I've been checking in on him from time to time, and I think he's really grown as a candidate. I think he's gotten better at speaking, honestly, and I think he was hitting all the right spots during his speech that he was doing at the Burners event that day. So I thought that was really powerful, and I just really liked it, honestly.
Yeah. He knows his stuff. He's a legislative analyst. Yeah. A lot of people said, maybe he didn't have the experience, but it Allison Hartson is part of Wolfpack, but it's interesting to me because being a legislative analyst, he's going to be doing basically the same thing as senator.
Yeah, basically.
And so it's just kind of ridiculous to say he doesn't have experience. And he's a non-corporate candidate, and he's been endorsed by 11 Our Revolution chapters, and that's not including the Feel the Burn Dem Club and other clubs that he's been endorsed. And he's not even from LA, but he has a lot of LA support.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of weird. I don't know.
I mean, he's been putting in the work, though. He's been going from the top of California all the way down, then back, and he's been doing 3 or 4 rounds of it. I mean, and then whenever you look into his social media, it's oh, I was here that day, and then the next day it's oh, I was here now. I'm wow, this guy's traveling everywhere. And that's one of the very impressive things about these candidates who are running on grassroots. They're traveling everywhere to get their name out there, to get their message out there, and to try to gain more supporters. It's very amazing, and I have a lot of respect for them for that, honestly.
One of my favorite candidates was Gayle McLaughlin, precisely because me and Pasta have been talking about uniting the Greens, the Dems, the DSA, Peace and Freedom. We've been talking about uniting all these progressives that don't even talk and that don't know each other very well. And literally, that is Gayle. Gale Force Wins. That is her her progressive alliance as well. She was mayor of Richmond for 2 years in Richmond, California, and she built this alliance there. And so she's bringing it to here, and she's talking with people, and she's been endorsed by over 40 people, including Our Revolutions, DSA, Peace and Freedom.
Yeah. Ralph Nader.
Ralph freaking Nader endorsed her. It's crazy, and you know what? I get why, because she just says the issues and she connects them all together, and she's honestly one of the best candidates I've ever met and she reminds me of a Bernie.
Yeah.
She has that empathy, that ability. It's just great. She's awesome, and she's running as an independent here for lieutenant governor because she's representing all of those parties, and I think that's a wonderful idea. And running sometimes as a Democrat in California is a hindrance because there's so many Democrats, and then they ask you to drop out so you can endorse a favorite.
Yeah, and oftentimes Republicans, like even if they are Republican, will actually run Democrat because they know that Republicans don't really have a chance in California right now. So
exactly, and that's what's happening in Costa Mesa. A lot of those Democrats are actually Republicans, and they're running, and they were wanting that endorsement, and our Revolution saw right through that, and they were like, no. So they endorsed independent, which doesn't happen that often, but it should be happening more often because it doesn't matter about the label, would you say?
I mean, it should just be like policy over party, really, honestly. Like Ron Placone likes to say that a lot, but that's the party label shouldn't be as significant as it is. But I think some people do take that as, oh, you're voting for a green, that's a wasted vote. You're voting for an independent, that's a wasted vote. Like I don't think that should be the way it should go. I think it should be more about what policies do you stand for? Do you stand for Medicare for all? Do you stand for college tuition-free college? Do you stand for raising the minimum wage to a livable wage? Are you corporate-free? Those are the things that we should really be focusing on instead of party. Instead of what party or do you have a D in front of your name? Do you have a R? And I think Gale Force might actually help help us overcome that whole party mentality that we currently have going on.
The lieutenant governor position isn't even an important position in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. But she's making it one, and she's making it also symbolic of unity. And also, if we get her in there, someone like that, she's going to make it a position to where she can get more progressives in. And that's why it's actually an important position now, especially in this race. Her opponent, who is running as a Democrat, was given $5 million from her father and gave herself $2 million. So again, for progressives, it's not about the amount of money you have for a grassroots campaign. It's essentially about the candidate, what they bring to the table, and the issues. And so we need to stop throwing people out because of their lack of funds. Yes, funds, we should support them, give them money so they can do things like print out flyers, have a place, a phone bank, et cetera, but it's not the most important thing in a grassroots campaign. I
mean, it is important, though. Like, don't get us wrong.
It's important.
Still donate to those campaigns if you can.
Don't stop donating. We're not saying
they're up against like a lot of these candidates have millions and millions of dollars in the bank that they can like just use for ads and all these different things. Our candidates have about 300,000 if they're doing really well. Yeah. Most of them don't even have that much. They're running on a very slim budget, and they're really doing their best, and they're really just trying to get their name out there by once again going around, walking, actually talking to the constituents. Back to David Hildebrand, Gayle McLaughlin, I think, is going around doing a lot of events, reaching out to people. Stephen Jaffe, I feel, has been doing that a little bit too. I mean, there's a lot of great grassroots candidates who are really going out there and getting out their name.
And that's the thing. Like right now, the grassroots is kind of emerging again. Like it's not like we've been doing this forever, just so to speak, in this way. Bernie kind of led a new momentum into the movement. And if Bernie was able to raise that much money, people say grassroots candidates should be able to. But that's the thing. Bernie was in Congress for 30 years. He lost many of his initial runs when he was a lot younger. So now it's unfair to compare that. Like it's going to happen. Candidates who are grassroots are going to be able to raise a lot more money, and they have in certain areas. But it's also like more difficult because these grassroots candidates aren't just given $5 million from a super PAC, $2 million from a rich donor. Like you can't compete with that. Yeah. So as long as they're focused on the issues and they get their message out there, I know David Hildebrand has a lot of Twitter followers. Yeah. He has so much social media power. The question is to translate that into votes. Yeah. And our primary is on June 5th. So we are very excited and looking forward to having all these candidates, at least a couple of them make it through. How do you feel about the lieutenant governor race? Do you feel Gayle has a chance? Or?
I think Gayle has a real chance here, though. I mean, that race doesn't really have... That race is actually a really easy race, though, for progressives especially, because there aren't any other progressives running. Gayle McLaughlin is a proven progressive. She took on the oil companies. Yeah. She's actually won those battles. She has that reputation, and really, when you talk to her, you kind of realize that she's genuine about what she's talking about. She's serious about this. She isn't just simply running for lieutenant governor just to gain power or to go onto the basically steps to get into a governor position. No, it's more of a, I'm doing this because, first of all, I do want to have a position here to help affect policy, but I also want to help get this thing called Gale Force running. Once again, going back to the whole getting this whole alliance between progressives, whether they're Green or Democrat or Independent, where we can start working together in a group. I mean, that's what Gayle McLaughlin has going for her, and because she has that reputation, because she has that name recognition, because she's working very hard trying to get all these voters, I think she has a real good chance, and I think she will actually end up in the top 2.
And that's going to be a great victory for us because many of us are rooting for her, and like I said, it's symbolic, and it'll also get a real progressive that's committed and loyal to all of the parties, which is great because then that's going to help unify the very fragmented California progressive race. Because even David Hildebrand was suggesting we will sit down after this. We're going to sit down and after the primaries and go, okay, now this person should run for this person in the future, and this person should run for this. So that way we don't have 3 progressives running for the same race when one could run for Senate, the other one for governor, the other one for House. That's how you do things. You talk to each other and you build bridges. You can't just, go. It really sucks for people in the Senate race too, because Pasta is Fiorella, I have to vote for this guy, I don't know who to vote for, because it's there's just, especially there's 2 progressive candidates that are awesome. There's another progressive candidate that also is backed by Justice Democrats and the TYT. And then there's Kevin De Leon, who's not a progressive, but he's taking progressive votes. He acts
progressive, though. He's like, oh, look at me, I take corporate money, but I'm also for Medicare for all, and that's actually made
DACA
that.
And blah blah blah. So I mean, it's tough for progressive, especially because we don't want a victory with Dianne Feinstein. We really don't, and it's looking like she's gonna win because there's a very fragmented. All these progressives running, and we really don't know. That race could go anywhere, but it's going to be a tough one.
Although that race is very strange because, especially on the more establishment-leaning side of the Democratic Party, there's a little bit of ageism going there, where it's Dianne Feinstein, we like her, but, let's face it, she's in her mid-80s. Maybe it's time we give someone younger a chance, which is why I think if Kevin De Leon does make it into the general, which I hope he doesn't because I don't want to have to choose between Feinstein and De Leon. But if that actually does happen, then I feel De Leon might actually have a chance because I think some progressives are very calculating in this, saying, hey, he's at least supporting Medicare for all. Maybe we should vote for him. And then he'll get those progressive voters, possibly. And the establishment-leaning, more centrist-leaning Democrats might look at that and go, you know what? Dianne Feinstein's a little too old. Let's give this new guy a chance.
It's definitely a strategic vote for those voting for Kevin De Leon, and I absolutely understand it. However, to me, if you keep something there, it's going to remain. And if you continue voting for corporate funded candidates, and they might tell you and promise you the moon and the stars, you end up with a corporate candidate that's not really going to fight for you. It's going to fight for who's going to fight for the corporations. And so then we're back at square one. And obviously between him and Dianne Feinstein, I would choose him. But again, that's lesser of evils once again. And that's something we have to be able to break. And it's a cycle that has to end, really.
I mean, especially because it's a primary. I mean, you should really vote for the person who represents you, who passes your litmus, because I have a litmus test. I don't know about you, but mine is 100%. Being corporate free if you're a corporate free candidate and if you support Medicare for all, then I'll maybe look at you and go, okay, what else do you stand for? But if you accept corporate money and you claim to stand for Medicare for all, I'll be like, good for you for standing for Medicare for all, but I'm not gonna vote for you. if it's just like, oh, I'm taking corporate money and I'm not even gonna support Medicare for all, I'll be like, forget it. No, I'm not gonna vote for that for that. But it's a little concerning that some progressives decide to try throwing their hat with Kevin De Leon when we have progressives running who are corporate free. But we'll see what happens with that race.
Yeah, I mean, it's about also, they're looking at it like they want to win. So, I mean, I get it. I just, I don't respect it as much. So I did want to ask you a little bit about your show, the Progressive California Uphill Media.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit more about it?
It's a show about California politics. Well, let's start off with Uphill Media. Uphill Media, formerly known as Bernie TV, it started off during the 2016 election cycle when basically the founder behind Bernie's 2016 TV saw that Bernie Sanders just wasn't getting coverage. And that those rallies were being ignored. Remember, CNN was constantly covering Donald Trump, MSNBC, Donald Trump rally after Donald Trump rally, and occasional Hillary rally. They wouldn't even cover Bernie Sanders' speeches when he would be talking. They would be covering an empty stand. That was the mainstream media. So John Ellis, who is the founder of Uphill Media, decided to start this channel where he would start streaming Bernie Sanders rallies. And from there, he went and after streaming rally after rally, he started interviewing progressive candidates. Well, he and his team started interviewing progressive candidates. And after the 2016 elections, it was like, we ended up with Donald Trump. What are we going to do next? And what John Ellis and the Uphill Media team decided to do was they were like, hey, let's create our own little media thing that we can help out the progressive revolution with. So that's how Uphill Media was born. They've been interviewing candidate after candidate since, I think, April of last year. They started off with Stephen Jaffe. Since then, they've had on Allison Hartson. They've had on David Hildebrand. They've had on so many different candidates. And as spin-offs of these interviews, we started doing stage shows. So we currently have 3 state shows. We have Progressive Washington, which is a Washington-based progressive show. We have Progressive Oregon, which is a Oregon-based progressive show. And then we have Progressive California, which is the latest. And with that, we have our little West Coast blue wall going on there.
That's awesome.
So what my show, Progressive California, which I co-host with the lovely Laura Livengood, is about is we have on progressive candidates who are running in California. It's an hour-long show, so that we do 30-minute interviews with these candidates, and I do about a 20-minute segment where I talk a little bit about the news having to do with progressive candidates in California or having to do with California Democrats in general. I spend most of my time calling out Nancy Pelosi, if I'm honest, but
well, she needs to be called out.
Yeah, there's a lot there. But it's a great show. Sunday, 7 p.m. Pacific time. If you guys can tune in, that would be totally awesome. We're going to continue to have great progressive candidates on, and on June 5th, California Primary Day, we'll be doing live election coverage, probably starting somewhere from 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. So make sure to check that out.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's going to be a busy time up until June 5th, basically.
Yeah.
We're all like super tired, and we've been all doing a lot of interviews and going to many events, and you know, it's going to be nerve-wracking. Pasta was like, I think we're going to cry. There's going to be tears, and it's going to, you know.
Yeah, it's especially because this is the first round since the 2016 elections.
Yeah.
This is going to be brutal, but you know, it's all about learning really. I mean, and then I actually wanted to ask you about this because you're connected with a lot of these progressive groups and you understand how divided they really are in California.
Yeah.
One of my main concerns is that, one of my thoughts really is that because this was our first time, we really didn't know what we were getting into. We were a little naive. We kind of hoped there was going to be a progressive wave. We're starting to realize maybe that's not going to happen. We're starting to realize, okay, these groups are a little too fragmented. There are problems here. I'm not that concerned about the progressive candidates. I think they've gained their experience. Whatever happens to them in the end, David Hildebrand, we have all these candidates, they'll go on to run again. I think they'll be involved in politics, and then 100%. Next time they come back, I think they'll be better than ever, and it'll be great. But with the progressive groups, I'm a little bit concerned that maybe they might not learn from this experience, and maybe they might not be so willing to reflect upon what's happened during this election cycle and go, okay, here's what we can do better, here's what we should be doing. Maybe they'll pull a Hillary, we could say, be like, this is what happened, it wasn't our fault. I'm a little concerned about that. What do you think? Do you think we'll be able to get past that, or do you think we're going to have a little bit of a struggle here after the 2018 midterm election where groups are going to be saying, hey, it's not our fault, and not really trying to learn from 2018 midterm experience?
I think progressives are actually learning the hard way, so to speak, but they're learning. There are going to be some people, when you're dealing with human beings and egos, there are going to be some people that are not going to want to move forward and are going to want to do their own thing, just like there were people after 2016 that Dem exited completely and never came back, and we're just like, you know, fuck everything. We're just going to like leave and, you know, let's go like get the guillotines, and there's just no viable solutions with that. I'm all for that, you know, let's eat the rich, whatever, but there's no viable solutions. We need to have actual plans, actual tactics. And the problem here, specifically in California, is there is a lot of different opinions. There's a lot of progressives, but they just don't know how to get organized. And so with that, we're going to work on the kind of Gayle force wins kind of thing where we're organizing, which is exactly why it's so important, because we need to be able to have conversations and sit down and say, look, honestly, we're not going to win that many seats in this race right now. I think 2020 is going to be where we do take more, especially if we sit down and get our act together. And I think the majority of the progressives are out there involved in politics, involved in activism, involved in getting things done, are actually willing to work. And we've all been talking about it like, yeah, this, you know, the people that we're with right now are the people that we're going to work onwards to 2020. So we're looking at 2022. We're not just looking at, you know, this race. Everyone, you know, is like ready as soon as Bernie announces. In fact, people got that email about him announcing for Senate and they all freaked out. They were like, wait, Bernie, you did that on purpose. Because, you know, and it's that kind of excitement that's kind of like momentum that's happening. And I've heard it from several progressives that you just feel it and you know it's going to happen. But it's just kind of like we have to have plans. And as soon as these primaries are over, we need to sit down and be like, okay, so this is what's going to go down in November. And then after November, this is what's going to go down like for 2020, because that's when we're going to see more of a progressive wave, because then we'll have time to have made our mistakes this year, get our act together, form alliances that we haven't formed. There's a lot of progressives who don't talk to the Democratic Socialists of America here. And it's crazy to me because they're winning many victories in other states. And in
I mean, how much of a presence does the DSA have in California right now?
They do a lot of activism, especially when it comes to housing and rental crisis and homelessness. But it's funny because I talk to other progressives and they're like, well, they do their own thing and blah blah blah, and it's like, we need each other, because we imagine. I don't know if all of you watch Game of Thrones, but I'm gonna throw a Game of Thrones reference. Imagine uniting all these houses, right, against the White Walkers. If these houses do not unite against the White Walkers in DC, against literally they're White Walkers, if we're gonna lose, we need everyone to put their differences aside and come together and defeat this establishment. And that's exactly what needs to happen. And that is, again, why I'm so enthused with Gayle McLaughlin, because she's one of the only candidates besides David Hildebrand to be talking about that. And
she's actively doing it. She's endorsing candidates. There's like a nice little list called Gayle Force, where you can go and look at which candidates she's endorsed, which candidates. Basically, she doesn't endorse anyone unless they're progressive and corporate free. So that's basically a nice little list that you got going right there, where you can say, hey, I live in this district. I wonder if there's anyone who Gayle has approved of, who she has endorsed. Check out that list and maybe go, oh, well, there's that candidate. I didn't know about that candidate. I'll go vote for him in 2018, or and on and on and on.
And we need to spend more time, even if someone doesn't agree with us. Let's say, you know, the person's like, well, Dem exited. I'm not going to work with Democrats. Okay, that's fine. Just show them with actions that this kind of alliance, this kind of inclusiveness is working. Because if we spend all our time arguing with them, we're never going to get them on our side. We need to spend more time showing them through actions that this is working. And it is working. In fact, in Georgia, Stacey Abrams just won the nomination for governor, the first time an African-American woman won and the nomination. And so if she goes on, she can win the seat, and that would be amazing, especially in a state like Georgia, because Georgia is extremely racist and southern, and it's amazing. She beat her opponent by 74%. That's insane, and it's an Our Revolution candidate. So it's not like we're not having victories. We're having very local victories mainly. Yeah, that was a great big victory, but I think what needs to happen is we can't see every single state as or every single failure as a complete failure of the movement, because that's going to happen. It's going to happen time and time again. Even when we do better, it's still going to happen. And so we need to be able to understand why we lost, understand what was happening, and learn from that, and then win next time. And that's how it's going to be. This movement isn't an overnight situation, right? People want it to be. Like they don't understand. Sometimes you let your emotions.
Yeah. And especially because it's a movement made of people. We're going to clash. We're going to have differences in opinion. But going back to your earlier comment about Demexiters and Dementors, I'm personally a Demexiter, if I'm honest. But you would think that it wouldn't be so hard for them to unite in certain circumstances, though. Because it's not like we disagree on the strategy. But when it comes to things like Medicare for all, college for all, supporting corporate free candidates, I feel like that's one of those things where our interests overlay and we can really unite on those things. Maybe not unite on the strategy as far as party goes, but when it comes to specific legislation, when it comes to specific movements, when it comes to like protests, for example, I feel like that's one of those things where we can unite, but I guess it is a lot harder than one might think.
Yeah, I mean, you're a Dem-exiter, but you like David Hildebrand, and he's running as a Dem. You know what I mean? But he's really like a socialist, a democratic socialist. But the thing is, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I don't care what people are, as long as they support this litmus test that we have. And there shouldn't have to be a litmus test, but really in the way that these politics works, there has to be, because if you don't tell these politicians what what they need to support, a lot, they don't do it. The corporate politicians especially, right? And so it's great to be able to recognize candidates that you want to support and you're passionate about supporting when they stand for the same values that you do. And it's just that simple. And we need to be able to do that. Like, we've spent so much time arguing about Dem-exit, Dem-enter, forming a new party. It's like, look, there's all these parties there already. We can eventually form a new party. I think the future is that there's going to be many, many parties that have a lot of power. There's, these little parties that don't have that much power now are going to rise and have more power, and that's what the establishment is afraid of. That's why they continuously rig elections and then they blame Russia, but let's not even go there. But so I think the future is going to allow more parties. The Democratic Party Dem-enter strategy isn't to push the Democrats left, because a lot of these Democrats aren't going to be pushed left because of money. It's all about the money. It's about infiltrating it with people who aren't really Democrats, who are really like more socialistly driven, who are more green driven, who are more whatever, more to the left. And through that infiltration, we would just use the party. And it's funny because Bernie Sanders continuously, I love how he does it. People say he's a chess player, and I agree. Like, he's great. He's been in this for 30 years. Imagine being so freaking advanced, like awoke, and like for being with all these Democrats that are like stuck in the Middle Ages. And I do have compassion for him in that sense, because I know how it is right now to feel like that. Imagine feeling that years ago. And I think it's smart of him to run as a Dem, and then if he gets nomination, he says no, and then runs as an independent. I mean, and he gets a lot of criticism from Democrats and from many people in general.
And I feel like these people who are currently complaining, saying, "Oh, but Bernie's not a Democrat. Why is he doing this?" and like bitching about that in a sense. I feel like they wouldn't have done that if Bernie Sanders hadn't run in the 2016 presidential election, because this is something that Bernie's done in the past elections, and suddenly they're like, "Oh, but Bernie's running this Democratic primary, then he plans to drop out and run as an independent." Gasp! I'm shocked. Like, it's a little weird. I think it's a little hypocritical on their 100%. Part, but
a lot hypocritical. I mean, he wouldn't be doing that if the Democratic Party wouldn't constantly try to like get on him, and throw him out. And he's never really been a Democrat. He's always been an independent. Yeah. And so that's the thing. Like, that's both a criticism that the establishment gives him, but it's also like, well, if he doesn't run as a Democrat, you're gonna give him crap, so he has to do it. It's like he can't win in anything he does. And I think it's wonderful, because that's an example of using the party and doing it for the greater good. And it's just funny, because it's not, I don't feel bad he's using the party. Like, I mean, the party has used people for years.
Yeah.
They've used the working class people. They used minorities. They use anyone that they can. And they haven't really given us much. So.
Yeah, and they do everything they can to screw over progressives anyway. So it's nice to see the opposite happening, where Bernie's using the system for the advantage of progressives. I mean, and like, as a quick side point, these Democrats are like, can you believe it? Bernie's not a Democrat. I'm like, yeah, that's actually one of the perks, believe it or not.
Yeah.
People don't like Democrats because Democrats don't stand for anything. Sure, Tom Perez can scream about how we have to lead with our values all he wants. He's not convincing anyone.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer can go on and talk about a better deal. And a better deal just stands for the same thing. And look at the other guy. Look at the other guy. That's all a better deal is. We need the real deal. We need Bernie Sanders. We need someone like that. Progressives that have those same values. Tulsi Gabbard. Like, people like that are actually focused on issues that we care about. Getting out of freaking wars.
Yeah.
Wasting all this money on wars when people are homeless, when we need single-payer health, when we need free college, public college. I mean, you're a college student right now.
Yeah.
Like, it affects you. And that's the thing. These people a lot of them are older, and I'm not trying to be ageist, but a lot of them are older. They're from a different time. They aren't understanding how things are for us, for this generation. And I did want to ask you, you're a little bit younger than me. You're 19.
Yeah, I'm 19.
You are the Z generation, and
yes.
so that just sounds like some kind of like zombie apocalypse. Like,
yeah, it's sort of like a cool designation, but at the same time, it's like, okay, so you guys just ran out of letters, so now you were just like, we'll put the Z thing. It's fine. It's Generation Z. It's fine. It's like,
yeah,
they're like, for the generation after mine, isn't like Generation Alpha or something? Like, yeah.
It's just funny. It's just very futuristic, actually. But it's funny because millennials got so much shit, and some older people still like bunch us all together. But technically, the Generation Z is more of the like the Snapchat, Instagram, like social media generation. And my sister is 15, and she's very much says Facebook is for old people. And it's funny because I'm always on Facebook, and she's like, Facebook's for old people. I'm like, really? Oh. But it's just, tell me more, like, what your generation thinks, like, what on politics, like, what is their take, if they even have a take? Because I don't blame them.
It's sort of fun. Well, like, I have a lot of friends who are politically involved. Like, I have a friend who's currently trying to get a young DSA sort of thing going on at his community college. So there are some people who are really activated by Bernie Sanders and his run. But I think there's I know a bunch of people who are just completely don't trust the political system. If they don't feel like their voice really matters. I mean, and it can't be helped because, like, a lot of my friends who live in California, for example, they went to go vote because they were old enough to vote. They were 18 when the election happened in 2016, and they went to go vote for Bernie Sanders in the primaries. And what happened was they were given a provisional ballot. Their name wasn't on the voters list. They couldn't actually go cast a vote. The only thing they could give was a provisional ballot. And they came out going like, you know what, the system's rigged. And remember, the California primary happened after the AP, I think it was the AP, called it for Hillary Clinton. So they were already feeling like the system doesn't care about them. And really, the challenge with a lot of these progressive candidates, I think, to try to get out the young person's vote is really trying to convince them that it's worthwhile. I mean, the thing that Bernie Sanders did was he had a convincing message. He said, "Hi, I'm for Medicare for all. I'm a corporate-free candidate. I'm not going to take any corporate money whatsoever. I'm going to try to get money out of politics," which is another thing that we love because we know that the system is corrupt. Like the interesting thing is there are people out there who listen to that and go, "Oh, that can be true." And then we look at the votes and they go, wait, so my representative voted this way because he was bought off by the healthcare industry, he was bought off by the pharmaceutical industry, she was bought off by the private prisons. Like, that happens. But with my generation, we kind of grew up listening to that, especially if we were, bored and listening to Jon Stewart, for example, from The Daily Show, back when he was hosting The Daily Show. One of the more common themes was, hey, the money's affecting the politicians. Hey, the Democrats voted in this way because guess what? They're bought off by the same people as the Republicans. And we kind of know that. And we see that, and we really don't think our time is well spent voting. And this goes back to how our voting days are on Tuesdays.
Yeah. A work day.
Yeah, a great way to discourage voters to begin with. Oh, yeah, I have school on Tuesday. I have work afterwards. You expect me to go vote on? No.
Yeah, and they do that on purpose, by the way. And you know, there are countries that are third world countries, and people have the entire day off to vote. And you can technically go, by the way, to your workplace and say, I'm actually going to vote. You are entitled to take off work for that. But most people don't know that. And
is that in California or just...
I know for sure it's in California. I'm not sure if it's a statewide or nationwide, but it's definitely in California. I actually doubt that it's nationwide.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi. I doubt you can get away with that. And that's what it sucks too, because they're right. They're right. The system is rigged. They are going to try to keep your voice from getting to the polls, which is exactly why, instead of saying the system is rigged and giving up, we cannot give up. And it's hard, because I understand that that feeling of being jaded. I understand that feeling of like apathy, because you feel like, what are you gonna do? Like, they always rig it. And I think that's why Bernie, the movement, was so important, because he made people feel like, hey, there's a chance. And that's why it hurt so much when he lost, because he really didn't lose. He would have won. Bernie would have won. But because it's like, you know, a lot of these races were called way before all of these ballots were counted. I remember having issues when I went to vote. The machine wasn't reading my vote, and then the lady didn't want to give me another thing, and I was like arguing, and a lot of these poll workers were pro-Hillary poll workers. That's another thing. We need to have our people out there. Me and a few progressives were talking about having voting vans, especially like having people be able to access like rides that people don't have cars. And so I was like telling people, okay, like we should be able to like carpool if you need a car to go to the polls, if you need whatever you need, like we should provide it for each other. A lot of us are socialists. Come on, let's do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, and to go back to your point of the youth vote, like we need to get your generation to vote, and it's gonna be tough because of what you said, because you know, they saw Bernie Sanders be cheated, and I mean, but we also see how much the youth loves Bernie Sanders. I mean, like the marches, they were screaming for him, like people compared it to the Beatles.
And that was basically what happened. They were all like, Bernie, like, shake my hand, take a selfie with me, like that.
And he's how old is he now? Like he's a Vermont Jewish senator, an older man. These kids don't have anything in common with him, but they have that one thing, and they want a progressive, better future. They want to see their country work for them, and that's that tie that Bernie has with all of us, because we want that for everyone, and the youth is the future. And so it's just kind of like, why are we not investing in them? We need to, these politicians, all of them, progressive or not, should be on to the youth. Like they should be like catering more, but they really don't, because they never worry about them, because they don't vote, right? Imagine if they do. And that's the way we win, I think, in 2020, especially. Right now, it would be great to have the youth vote, but it's also about education. It's not really taught.
I mean, I don't think so. I think, well, I don't know. Well, if it's California, I think it's more the whole I don't trust the system thing. Maybe nationwide it's about education, but I know a lot of people who live in California who kind of went through who basically learned government. The class was called government. It's basically civics. And you learn about the system and how it works. You learn about superdelegates. You learn about all these things. And they came out going, you know, I don't trust the system at all. Like, why do we have this? Why are the superdelegates still a thing? Like, it's... You guys need a message if you want voters to come out and vote for you in this corrupt-ass system that we have going on. And Republicans have their own message. It's not very attractive to most young people. Democrats don't really have a message either, believe it or not. A better deal is like the lamest thing ever.
It's like,
and like even on issues where Democrats can actually win, like gun control. That's one of the things where gun reform is actually an issue, where if you poll Americans, a majority will say they agree with you on specific things like background checks. Let's improve that. Like, people will actually agree with them on that, but the DCCC will come out and tell their candidates, don't run on that. No. We don't want to politicize the shootings. No, we're not going to talk about gun control, which is another aspect that I think it'll be interesting to see with the Parkland shooting kids coming out and really trying to get out the votes. During this election cycle, it'll be interesting to see how much of an effect it'll actually have on the young people's vote. My prediction is we may get a slight boost in the number of young people voting, especially in the areas that are affected by school shootings.
Yeah.
But not to the point where it'll be so significant, because once again, kids, they might register to vote after being encouraged by people like David Hogg, but when it comes election day, you kind of have to motivate them to come out and vote on a fucking Tuesday.
Yeah. And once we get more of us in there, more of the progressives in there, one of the most important things to do is to fix the way the election process works. I'm all for not having superdelegates. I'm 100% all for that. I think that system is outdated. I think it allows for unfairness, a preference. Why should these people decide? What have so much power? And I think that's the key. But we can't do that if we don't get our people in there. So it's just a catch-22, and these politicians do need to do their homework and target this generation. A lot of the way they run their campaigns is based on the past. A lot of it is phone banking. A lot of it is knocking on doors, which is great. But you also need to be on social media, because a lot of these younger generations are all social media, and that's how you reach them. That's how you reach them.
By the way, Lieutenant Governor, Gayle McLaughlin, who's running for Lieutenant Governor right now, one of my friends, Adriel Hampton, is actually one of her social media guys. And he posts like these screenshots of Facebook statistics, and it shows that Gayle McLaughlin's page is getting hell of a lot more engagement than people like Kevin De Leon and Gavin Newsom and all the other politicians, because all the other politicians don't really focus that much on social media. They might post things from here and there. They might post an event, but when it comes to grassroots stuff, you gotta post regularly. You gotta post about the latest thing, and you gotta post about the events. You'll be in this city this week. You'll be in that city the next week. You'll be in that place, that event on a weekend, like et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and that's listening to your voters and the base, and targeting young people, because that like we said, that's the way to do it. And I hope that we as progressives are able to have some wins. I mean, we're both going to be doing a lot of things until June 5th. I know I'm going to be attending the Bernie Sanders event with Sean King, and I forget the lady, one other person, but they're going to be here in Los Angeles on Saturday. Bernie's also going to be in Anaheim.
Is it this Saturday or?
It's June 2nd.
June 2nd, yeah.
And they're going to be, Bernie's going to be there protesting with the unions at Disney, actually. So it's going to be a day of Bernie. So I'm really excited. And well, thank you for watching, and thank you for having these discussions with me. That was actually
that was
really
fun.
Cool. Yeah. We'll have to do it again soon. Okay, guys. Thanks for watching.